Hey, it's Dougie Wood, and in this video, I'm going to show you my top 3 ways you can boost engagement in your Microsoft Teams meetings. So join me to discover how you can use some of these features that you may not have used before to ensure that you can get the best for your Microsoft Teams meetings. Let's take a look. Together mode in Microsoft Teams meetings. Now, this is a fantastic way to keep a large audience inside of a Teams meeting engaged and staying almost included in the meeting. Now, this is probably not going to work that well in this demo because it's only me in this meeting, but you'll get a good idea of what it would look like. Now, the idea of the together mode is that, say, for example, you've got 10 or more people inside of a meeting. Actually, in fact, the more people you've got, the better it works. It will put everybody into kind of rows of seats. So rather than being kind of grids on a screen, you actually get to see every individual person in the kind of the meeting sat in some sort of seat, like it's a stadium or something like that. Now, it's really easy to enable. All you need to do is click on the view button across the top and then click on together mode. That will then give you a kind of the initial default kind of options of what you can choose to make it look like. So we can either use the sort of white seats, the dark seats, almost like an amphitheater type of look, a conference room, and actually each one of these templates is giving you suggestions of what the kind of the maximum that it would support, or the kind of the ballpark of what's going to look good for this particular sort of space. So there's all sorts of different type of options in here. You can use it, as I say, if you just wanted a small meeting. So say, for example, I want to select a conference room, and that's then going to put me in here. But as I say, it's not going to work very well because I'm here on my own. You have to have at least 2 or 3 different people to actually really see how this feature works. Or again, I could choose to change the scene and actually put myself into a much bigger kind of space. So you can see now I'm sat of a seat. You can imagine other people sat next to me. And actually, the more people that you add, the camera will zoom out and out and out to make sure you can see everybody. And it's just a fantastic way, especially if you're doing things like town hall type meetings, which is a bit of an Americanism, but basically it's a big kind of like conference. You've got 40, 50 people of a team, a department, and you're going to be giving some announcements and things like that. It's a fantastic way for everyone to feel like they're almost together, even when they're kind of working from home. You can then see people's reactions in live time, all in one place, rather than with a normal Teams meeting where actually you've kind of got everybody in different grids, and you can't always see everybody. If you've got 40 people in a Teams meeting, you'd have to use the scroll button inside of a normal Teams meeting to see everybody's face. So if you've got a large kind of announcement or something like that, and you want to see everyone's reaction to it, being in together mode means that you'll actually be able to see everybody's face at the same time, so you can gauge that kind of reaction to what it is that you've just announced. As I say, there's plenty of options in here to change the scenes, so you can have it small, and medium, or large. You can also choose to assign seats. And again, this is not going to work very well because it's just me in here. But you can see, actually, you can select somebody. And actually, if, say, for example, you wanted to have certain people almost front and center, you can choose to actually allocate that person to that particular space. And then you can assign them. And then basically you've changed the scene for everybody, move the person into that particular space, and you've then created a kind of seating structure. Now, to be totally honest with you, I've not really seen this being used a lot because it doesn't really matter, to be honest, unless you've got some real kind of, I don't know, way that you want to group people together. It's not going to make much difference. It's not like they can kind of whisper to the person sat next to them or something like that. But some people, I've seen it used more for kind of like promotional kind of stuff, as in like when people are promoting this feature to why people should be using this feature inside of Teams. And then they've put sort of like all of their sort of salespeople on one side of the room, all the marketing people on the other side of the room, or something like that, just to kind of give it that kind of feel of, and people recognize that those different teams are kind of sat together. I don't really see a massive benefit, to be honest, to it myself, but just to let you know, that feature is there. 3D spaces inside of Microsoft Teams meetings. Now, I think this is a fantastic feature, but it is like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. 3D spaces, or otherwise known as mesh inside of Teams meetings, is essentially the kind of avatar virtual reality space where you can go, and it's almost a bit like a sort of online gaming sort of experience, but for your Teams meetings. So let's dive in and take a look. Now, inside of a Teams meeting, to enable this, you just need to click on the View button across the top and then select Immersive Space 3D. Now, this might take a couple of minutes to actually get you into the meeting. So it's something that I often recommend, that get to your meeting early and make sure you enable this before, like 5 minutes before the meeting is supposed to start, because not only will it take you a little bit of time just to load into the meeting, it's also going to take you a little bit of time to find your feet, move around, especially if you've never used it before, and almost get to the space inside of the meeting. Now, when you're loading into this, it really does feel like it's a kind of online game that you're loading into. It even has the like kind of loading screens and little tips for going immersive and things like that, and showing you what you can do inside of one of these virtual 3D immersive spaces inside of a Microsoft Teams meeting. So as it's loading, as I say, it's showing you things like you can actually play games. You can do things like ring toss. You can do things like chatting around a campfire and roasting marshmallows. You can even present in virtual space, so you can get kind of dashboards up and things like that to present. But this is what it looks like. So this is essentially my immersive space. Because I'm recording my screen, it is just a little bit glitchy, but I can assure you when you use it yourself, it's not actually this kind of jumping around and a bit glitchy. It's only because I'm recording my screen. But you can see that actually there's a couple of different areas of the meeting. We have, this is the kind of the presentational area. And you can see if I was hosting a meeting, maybe I was to stand at the front over here, and I could actually share my screen or presentation, and other people can see that. You can also see the seats around the room, and you can always click on those to choose to sit down if you wanted to. And now, obviously, I would be watching whoever was presenting during that meeting. Also, inside of the meeting, we can do things like reaction. So if we like something or we wanted to show appreciation, we can use things like clapping or likes or things like that during the kind of demonstration, the presentations, to engage with that meeting even further. Now, there's also things like avatar reactions. So you can choose to use things like Chef's Kiss or things like if you're thinking about something. It's just, again, a ways to actually almost bring your avatar to life. We can choose to walk around using the keypads, just the directional arrows and things like that. And there's a few things that we can interact with in these spaces. So as I said before, we've got things like a fireplace down here, which is great for kind of breakout sessions and things like that. We can roast marshmallows and that sort of thing. There's also little games as well. So there's things like this beanbag toss. So you can pick up a beanbag and then try and throw it. As you can see, I am absolutely terrible at this. So let's have one more go. Come on. Oh, that was so close. One more time. Oh, that was absolutely terrible. I'm really finding the urge to throw. I'm going to throw one more. I really want to try and get it in. Oh, so close. Anyway, so this is a fantastic place that you can obviously have team building, bonding, and things like that to try and get this in. I've just realised actually this one's even harder. The hole's actually moving on this one. That feels like that's making things even more challenging. Further down here as well, we have these kind of sort of glowing orb things, which actually when you click on them, they make different noises. So again, as a team, you can choose to try and make a little jingle, a little tune by clicking on these together. Now, this is just the default. It's quite good for kind of small, medium-sized get-togethers and things like that. It's quite an informal kind of setting as well. As you can see, it almost looks like it's a bit of a retreat or something like that. But we also have kind of some options down here. So we can choose, for example, seating options. So we can choose to actually jump to different spaces in the kind of presentational area, even from outside. We can also choose environment settings. So this is just the default, which is the lake house. But actually there's loads of other kind of options here, depending on the size of the meeting that we are hosting. So for example, we've got things like workshop, which has got breakout rooms for creative collaboration, Oasis Large for a much larger kind of meeting space, or Oasis Small for much smaller spaces. Now I'm actually just going to jump into this workshop area because I think this is fantastic. It would be a great way of actually hosting kind of like a virtual conference or something like that, where actually we can have maybe a main presentation, like a keynote area or something like that. But there's also breakout rooms as well, which is included in the space. So you could almost have your keynote in the main area, and then after that, you could say, okay, we've got room. I think they're numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could say for breakout session 1, go to room 1. For breakout session 2, go to room 2, and so forth. And people can go into there. And there's actually dedicated desks in each of those different meeting rooms as well. So as you can see here, this is the kind of the core kind of meeting space that we've got. But also we've got areas like we've got room number 1, number 2, number 3. And if I just walk over there, you can see they are dedicated meeting spaces with their own kind of tables and chairs and things like that. So you can have your breakout sessions within these spaces as well. I should also mention you can also choose to change your avatar. So obviously I've tried to make mine look as close to me as possible with a beard and things like that. You can choose to totally customize your avatar though. You can change what they're wearing, the color of their hair, the color of their skin, and everything. You will notice though that nobody has legs. There's nothing from the waist down. So literally it's just the torso, clothing, color of the hair, beard, facial hair, things like that that you can choose to change. But obviously you can go into here and it's quite detailed, the different sort of configuration options you've got for changing your avatar. So you can really personalize it to make it look and feel exactly how you want to represent yourself inside of this Microsoft Teams meeting. So obviously this is fantastic for a really large kind of space. But again, we can choose to go to a much smaller area as well if we wanted to. So I'm just going to change the environment to actually jump into the small Oasis environment. So you can kind of see what it would look like if we only wanted to have a much smaller meeting space. Again, this area feels a little bit more formal than the original kind of default template, which is the lake house. The lake house is really good, to be fair, for social kind of events, get-togethers, parties almost in that kind of way. But it has a more relaxed feel, where some of these other templates have more of a kind of meeting kind of feel to them. So you can see here, this feels more like a boardroom. We've got, if I'm right, 8 different seats around here. We can choose, actually, once we're in this space, to go into the seating settings and choose what we would like. So whether we would actually do want a kind of horseshoe table, or do we want more of a semicircle table? And actually we can change that table. So maybe, for example, we're going to be seated, but actually there's going to be someone at the front that's going to be presenting something. So we want it to have more of an arch shape. But you can change this as you like. So as I say, we could have maybe more of a round table. So if there's something where you want to make sure you can definitely see everybody that's around the table, it feels a little less formal at this point. But again, every meeting is slightly different, and the way it feels is going to be slightly different. So you can change and customize this depending on that. Or you could just choose to have an empty space. Now, I must admit, I don't necessarily recommend this, because you then end up in a kind of situation where you could have people not exactly overlapping, but not really stood in a space that if you are actually having a meeting, then essentially you might not be focused on the right person who's talking at that point in time. Whereas actually it's quite good to remove the kind of seats and the spaces and things like that. If it's more of a kind of, imagine it's almost like a networking event or something like that, where you don't want people to sit down, you want them to kind of mingle and things like that, then actually removing the seats is a fantastic way to achieve this. So as you can see, there's loads of different options for configuring this 3D space dependent on what you want to achieve and the type of meeting that you're looking to host. Copilot in Microsoft Teams meetings is a fantastic way to boost engagement and get more value from your meeting. Treating Copilot like an additional party or additional person in the meeting, and asking them questions like how to get more out of the meeting, what questions should be asked, what are people most excited or concerned about from the meeting. All of this is going to be really useful for Copilot to be another pair of eyes over your meeting. So let's take a look. So this is, again, just a rough example. I've already set up a Teams meeting and I've done a little bit of kind of talking to the Teams meeting just as a dummy test run. Essentially, I'm simulating that this is a SharePoint workshop. And what I've done is I've basically said, my name's Dougie, I'm the SharePoint consultant. I have with me Jane Smith. I have with me Joe Blogs and their roles, what they're excited about for the project. We talked a bit about the project, but literally I only talked for about 2 minutes, something like that, just to try and simulate that this is a test meeting. Now, you will notice that I have my microphone across the top turned off at this point in time because I'm actually trying to record through a different microphone to record this particular video. So occasionally it will pop up and say that it can't hear me and things like that because technically the Teams meeting can't. And actually, interestingly, the reason why I do this is because I've done test materials in the past before where Teams has actually overheard me say that this is just a test or it's a dummy run or things like that. And then when I've tried to use Copilot to generate responses, it's factored that in. It's realised that actually it's a test run and it's put into the answer say, we know this was just a test run and blah, blah, blah. So I've tried to simulate it as best I can, but let's see what it comes out with. Copilot is pretty smart. So the first thing that I wanted to take a look at, well, I should probably say, we're going to treat Copilot like it's another member of the team in this meeting and ask it for kind of its own thoughts on the meeting. We can also ask it questions like to try and help re-engage the meeting in some way, shape or form. Now, to spin Copilot up in this meeting, all I need to do is click on Copilot. Now, what will be the case is it will need to start the transcript to use Copilot. So you need to make sure you click on that start button. And then when it says what language is everyone speaking, we're just going to click on confirm. So remember, we're pretending we're simulating a SharePoint workshop here. So the first question that I'm going to ask Copilot is going to be related to gathering requirements in the workshop. Now, a bit sort of Blue Peter style here. Here's a prompt that I made earlier. I'm just going to copy and paste that into Copilot and ask it. So the question is, what questions have not been asked yet to gather requirements about SharePoint? Now, the cool thing that I like about this is actually it's aware of everything that's been said in the meeting so far. We could get this to be even more kind of refined because actually you can tell Copilot and get it into the right frame of mind by saying things like, take the role of an advanced SharePoint consultant, and that might then change its kind of outcome and what it's thinking and the types of questions it's asking. But you can see here now it said, based on the meeting content so far, the following questions have not been asked yet to gather requirements about SharePoint. So what specific functionalities or features do different departments need from SharePoint? Are there any existing systems or tools that need to be integrated with the new SharePoint intranet? In fact, that's a fantastic question. Actually, I knew he was going to come up with some of these like low level kind of questions about departments and things like that, but actually integrating existing systems, very good question to ask. What are the security and access control requirements for different types of content? So in this dummy workshop, I've not yet talked about permissions or anything like that. So that's essentially what that's referring to. How will the content be managed and updated? Who will be responsible for it? Again, fantastic question there, because we do want to know who are going to be our SharePoint site owners, who's going to take responsibility for the content and things like that. What are the performance and scalability requirements for the SharePoint intranet? Are there any specific compliance or regulatory requirements? What is the timeline? Again, fantastic question here. What is the timeline for the project? Are there any critical deadlines? So knowing that and making sure working around people's holidays and things like that and whatever is really useful. What are the key metrics for success? So again, knowing the kind of being able to calculate the return on investment of why we're even doing this project. It's fundamental to know what the key metrics of success would be. So I'm really happy with those questions. I think they're fantastic questions. As I say, I've only really given a rough kind of sample of a meeting essentially inside of Copilot, but those are fantastic questions. And you can see actually here, we can do things like asking to recap the meeting so far. We can list action items. There's plenty of other things that we can do with Copilot that's prompting us straight away itself to do. We could try and use Copilot to re-engage a meeting. So we've all been in meetings before, and sometimes even these like workshops, quite often workshops can be 2, 3, 4 hours, something like that, and they can be long-winded. And if you're not taking proper breaks, you can definitely find that people get fatigued and they start to kind of get disengaged. So we could ask Copilot, for example, to ask it, say, what other questions could I ask to re-engage everyone back into the meeting? So there's some more questions that we could maybe ask, maybe pick on some people in the room. Now, as I said before, I've already sort of told sort of the team's meeting, who is in the room with me and their roles and things like that. So it's actually given me here to say, to re-engage everyone back into the meeting, you could consider asking the following questions. So Jane, could you elaborate on the specific branding elements you want to see in the SharePoint intranet? So there we go. So if Jane was sort of flagging a little bit, falling asleep, I could specifically pick on her and say, Jane, can you tell us more about the branding elements? We've not quite discussed all those bits yet. Or Joe, as in Joe Blogs, the operations manager, can you provide more details on the types of templates you envisage to be the manager's toolbox? So you could sort of drill into those questions a little bit more. What are some potential challenges you foresee with the training and adoption strategy, and how can we address them? How do you think the new video articles from the senior leadership team will impact internal communication? Can we discuss the key features that should be prioritized for the initial launch of the SharePoint intranet? So, as a SharePoint consultant, I'm often very aware that I can be the one that's speaking in the meeting or in the room for a long period of time. It could be that I barely took a breath for an hour. But the thing is with that is then you do find that people start getting disengaged and they're sort of not properly in the room. So actually putting it back onto the other person to say, okay, now you talk back to me. Here's some questions. You talk back to me. You give me more information. Will re-engage people back into that, and you'll get a much better experience from the team's meeting in general. And then a final example here. This is something that's really useful for consultants. So now wearing the hat of the consultant, or anyone who's gathering requirements, a business analyst, or anybody like that. Once you've completed your meeting, there's quite often you're going to need to get some notes. Now, there is a kind of element to Teams where you can get the notes out of the meeting. So if it's been transcribed, Copilot can give you the notes, the actions, and things like that afterwards. But if you wanted to be more specific, so as a consultant, I often want to know the two ends of the extreme of what my customers are most excited about for that project, but also what they're most concerned about. Because the most excited stuff, we really want to lean into it, make it top priority. These are the things we're definitely going to be doing, and blah, 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 blah. The concerns we need to mitigate, so to ensure that we've got a successful project, and more than anything, to be able to get buy-in to sell the overall project, we need to make sure that all the concerns have been squashed out, and we address them, we mitigate them, and we have a plan in place for them. So what I do in my kind of workshop reports, my follow-ups, is that I will include in it to say, here's a stakeholder table. Here's everybody, their name, their job title, and things like that, along with a column for things like what they're most excited about, another column for what they're most concerned about, so we can make sure we address that properly in the workshop report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in a prompt, which actually I think I could refine a little bit more, to be totally honest. There's a create a table of all the stakeholders. What I'm going to do is actually say include their names and job titles. And then what are they most excited about and what are they most concerned about. So the cool thing about Copilot is it can create tables for you of information based on what's just been kind of discussed. Now, this is pretty difficult to kind of see this table like this. So I would typically copy this out and then I'd put it into a Word document or OneNote or something like that. So if I just open a Word document, I'll just paste that table into here so it's much easier to read. But now you can see, for example, we've got the names of the stakeholders. So we've got Jane Smith, Joe Blogs, Dougie Wood, job title, Head of Communications, job title, Head of Operations, job title, SharePoint Consultant. Most excited about modern interface, eliminating email newsletters. Most concerned about ensuring the SharePoint intranet is on brand with organization's colours and imagery. So that is bob on, exactly what was discussed with Jane Smith. Joe Blogs, the Head of Operations. Improved navigational structure is something he's most excited about, and the manager's toolbox. He's most concerned about the impact on day-to-day work and ensuring there's plenty of training and adoption strategies in place. Myself, Doug Wood, as a SharePoint consultant, I'm most excited about the new areas of the newsfeed for senior leadership team video articles I'm most concerned about ensuring champions program with trainers, like a trainer-trainer approach for better internal support. I mean, that's bob on. That's exactly what was discussed. It's boiled down exactly what they're excited about, they're concerned about, and as a SharePoint consultant, that saved me loads of time and effort actually having to pull through my notes and put something together. Obviously, we could be more detailed than that. We could ask it to write out more about the kind of requirements, individual requirements from individual people in the meeting room and things like that. Maybe pull out things which people are sort of conflicted about. So one person had one belief, one person had another belief. There's loads of things that you could pull out from this just because we've recorded the transcript inside of our meeting inside of Microsoft Teams. So I hope you found that really useful in terms of how we can engage people more using Copilot in our Microsoft Teams meeting.